What's up, freak bitches, wherever you may be, however you may be watching? Thanks for giving us just a few minutes of your time. Back here with a breakdown of episodes 1 and 2 of Season 2 of The Mandalorian, joined always by my hetero life mate, Mr. Jeremy Wolner. What's up, buddy?
What's going on, my dude?
You actually caught up on Season 1 and the first couple episodes of Season 2 all in the span of like a week and a half, right?
Yeah, I watched season 1, one or two each day, so it was about a week or so. And then I think maybe it was like a 2 before season 2 came out, so it's all kind of been melded together. But I'm caught up, and now it's just a waiting game of every time a new episode comes out. So now I just get to suffer with everybody else.
Yeah, well, we're all suffering for the next episode with the waiting, much like we are with election results. So, let's start by breaking down Episode 1. In Episode 1, we find the Mandalorian, Din Djarin, and I know I'm always pronouncing his name wrong, so go ahead and blow me up in the comments, I don't care, who is on a mission to deliver the child, aka Baby Yoda, back to the rest of his kind. He ends up on the familiar planet of Tatooine, in the small mining town of Mos Pelgo. Confronted by the town marshal dressed in Boba Fett's armor, Cobb Vanth. Is that how you pronounce his name? Ventic? Oh, hell, I don't know. Bottom line is played by one of my favorite actors, Mr. Timothy Olyphant. Rather than duels to get back the armor, Mando is convinced to help Vanth destroy some giant sandworm called the Krayt Dragon. After killing the giant sandworm, Vanth gives the armor back to Mando as promised. As Mando leaves, we see a shadowy figure watching the action from afar. He turns to walk towards the camera as we see Tamira Morrison, who, as we all know, is the one who played Boba Fett. Now, let's start with the beginning of it. We pretty much start off exactly where Season 2 left off, but there is this really great scene that really kind of kicks the season off for me, and the episode and the season off for me, when he's riding slowly into the speeder, on the speeder into the town, and it's very reminiscent of this, kind of the whole effect that they're going with this show, with like the lone gunman riding slowly into a town on his horse. It was very reminiscent of that. I thought it was a fantastic scene.
Yeah, it's basically, if no one's caught on by now, it's basically like reminiscent of a Western, back in the day you'd see, but obviously it's got its little Star Wars twists and whatnot. And it's still freaking sweet. Like I think it's badass because I love Star Wars, and I do love some Westerns, so melding the two together is pretty sweet.
So he ends up running into Cobb Vanth, played by, again, one of my favorite actors, Timothy Olyphant, and I was absolutely just over the moon when I found out they had cast him to play anything in the show. But he is every bit as cool as this. He's actually ultimately playing the same kind of character he was playing in Justified. He's the town sheriff. Did you ever watch that show?
No.
Well, I watched some episodes of it. I haven't binge watched it or anything. I probably should. But he's essentially the same character. He's a town sheriff, but definitely with much different things troubling him in this mining town on Tatooine than were troubling him in his town on Justified. But one of the things that bothers him is, as they were getting ready to possibly duel for the armor, this giant sandworm, this Krayt Dragon, decides to roll through town and causes a bunch of chaos. And rather than shooting out with each other over the armor, he convinces the Mandalorian to help him slay this Krayt Dragon to keep it from pestering the town anymore. It was kind of the vibes of the old Tremors movie with Kevin Bacon years ago, and I know you've probably seen that one. It was something along those lines. One of the cool things about this episode is you did get to dive a little more into what the Sand People really are. They were very peripheral characters who were kind of an annoyance in the original trilogy, but here you actually got to know them a little more. You actually got to a little more depth about who they are and what they are, and that ultimately they're just trying to survive like any other group of people out there roaming around the galaxy. So
yeah,
it was pretty cool for them all. It was pretty cool for them to all come together for this really kind of epic showdown between all these small creatures and this gigantic, Krayt Dragon.
Yeah, kind of many Davids in a Goliath situation, and that is what I was actually about to say next. Like, I don't know if you really consider the Sand People like necessarily bad guys, but like you said, like, yeah, they are kind of an annoyance, but it's like they're just kind of doing their own thing. They live there, and that's their home too. Out of it, maybe they have different lives. But in this case, in this episode, it's kind of like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So like, well, hey, let's join up. Let's just be fucking cool, and we'll take care of this problem that it's causing problems for all. So, like, we gotta put this petty shit aside and deal with this thing.
And they do end up coming to this understanding. They want to work together to try to figure out a good way to deal with this crate dragon, because it's really a problem for all of them. And of course, the Sand People want something out of it. After this, again, this absolutely epic battle between all these, the Sand People, the townspeople, and the Mandalorian. Of course, Mandalorian does something way cool. He ends up basically allowing himself to get eaten by this thing so he can blow it up from the inside.
Yeah, he kind of Men in Blacks it a little bit.
Yeah, kind of an action movie trope, but it looked really, really cool the way he did it. And then, of course, the end of it, he walks out with that gigantic piece of meat, which we actually end up seeing a little bit of in episode 2, which is really cool. But yeah, and then he ends up getting back Boba Fett's armor, and then he bounces out with his goodies. And of course, there is some significance to this somewhere in Star Wars lore, but I don't remember exactly where it is because I haven't read a lot of the expanded universe stuff. But after he blows open the creature, the Sand People climb around inside its innards and they grab this gigantic pearl out of its guts, and apparently that's some kind of a symbol of something or other. I forget exactly what it is, but that's what they get out of it.
I mean, it's Star Wars, people. It is what it is. At the end of episode 1, if you've ever seen that, which I don't know who hasn't, at the end when they had the peace between the people of Naboo and then the Gungans, they had that little orb thing. They're like, it's supposed to symbolize peace or some shit. I'm like, what is that thing? What does it mean? Who cares? I don't know. It's Star Wars. What? Everything's cool. I'm like, no one explains it, but it's fine.
I'm sure it probably explains it somewhere in the expanded universe stuff. I've just never seen it, so it could be.
But then again, Disney said, you know what? All the expanded universe doesn't actually. So I'm like, well, whatever. I know the big thing about this episode is that I was like, my jaw was on the floor and I was freaking the hell out because I see, me having watched the movies, and my friend who also watches the show hasn't actually watched the movie, so I'm like, didn't watch the episode of Boba Fett yet, the Boba Fett armor, and I'm like, oh, it's not going to hold the same weight, because I'm like, when they said, hey, there's another Mandalorian on Tatooine, it clicked immediately with me. I'm like, wait, is it Boba Fett? Because that's the only Mandalorian that we know of who would also be on that planet, probably. Well, so it wasn't clicking with this person, and I'm like, oh, it's not gonna be as cool. Because like when I saw him walk through the door and I saw the green and the red on the armor, I was like, I was freaking out. Like, oh my god, it's Boba Fett! Holy shit!
Well, then that
I knew it wasn't him. I know it wasn't him, but I'm just like, oh shit, there's the armor. Holy crap!
Yeah, he was a little too scrawny to actually be Boba Fett. I was nah, Boba Fett's probably a bit more cut. Timothy Olyphant kind of looks a little stringy in this, but he's still pretty badass nonetheless.
Yeah, he wears it well. The other thing that I was starting to say, we're freaking out over the Boba Fett armor making its return, but I'm like, the other thing did anybody notice that his speeder bike was manufactured out of the engine of Anakin Skywalker's pod racer? Did anyone catch that? Because that was freaking cool.
It looked like it was the engine.
Over that too.
It looked like it was the engine of an old pod racer. I didn't notice if it was Anakin specifically.
I'm kind of thinking, well, who else could it be? We're on Tatooine. I mean, I'm not saying it's a small planet, but I'm assuming they're like Mos Eisley is right there, and I don't know where Anakin lived. He lived in. I'm just saying. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's part of Anakin's pod racer, and I'm like, okay, you know what? Cool, dude. You made a fucking speeder bike out of that thing. That's all right. That's awesome.
But obviously the biggest shock came in the last probably 15 seconds or so of the first episode. We see that person kind of watching from up on top of the hill, and then as he turns around and walks towards the camera, it is a very, very familiar face. It's Tamir Morrison, the guy who played Boba Fett so many times. Now, one of the big questions going around after the episode aired was, is that actually Boba Fett or is it one of the clones? I think you can make an argument either way. I am 100% convinced that it's Boba Fett, because there's something that Timothy Olyphant's character says. It's when they're getting ready to fight the dragon. They said they're in an empty Sarlacc pit, And he says there's no such thing as an empty Sarlacc pit. And then the guy says, unless you kill the Sarlacc. And that got me thinking after I finished watching the episode.
Well, yeah.
I was like, if anybody's going to pull off some crazy way of killing the Sarlacc and getting out, it's probably going to be Boba Fett. And the further evidence to that is the fact that as he walks towards the camera and you get that good look at his face, you see all that scarring. He's obviously got some battle scars and stuff like that. Those very easily could have been acquired when he was fighting his way out of the Sarlacc pit. So that's me thinking it's Boba Fett.
Well, and again, I know, and I have to agree with you more so in the fact that I'm just gonna say that's correct, because I know I sat here and just said, well, Hitler Disney is what I'm gonna call him, basically said, no, fuck you. If we didn't make it isn't already made into a movie, it did not happen. I'm like, all right, so I wasted. You threw a giant middle finger to everybody who ever worked on anything was considered canon in expanded universe. So any comic books, any extended books, or anything, it just kind of got thrown up in the air, and they said, nope, fuck you, it doesn't matter anymore. I'm like, cool, I wasted my time with that. But one of the things that did happen that was, I guess I should say was, canon, was that, yes, when he fell into the Sarlacc pit in Return of the Jedi, he survived, and he did kill the Sarlacc, like he his way out of it. I think he used the rocket, he blew it up, and he climbed out of there. So I'm like, well, what I know be, and I'm like, I don't know if we're still going to just maybe, I mean, if we're still going to take that and give it the validation that, yeah, that's what happened to him, and, you know, he got separated from his armor, and then dude found it, and then hopefully we dive into his story and see, like you said, what happened to this dude since that time, because he probably just kind of turned away from that life and said, yeah, no. He had a bad time with that Sarlacc, so I'm pretty sure he just kind of wiped his hands clean of that.
Well, one other thing that I did realize as I was looking into some Mandalorian stuff, trying to take notes for the show, is that Daniel Logan, the young man who played the clone that Boba Fett got in the Attack of the Clones in Episode 2, he is actually on the cast list for Season 2. So it could be that Boba Fett got out of the Sarlacc pit, and we're going to be seeing his son, or his clone son, whatever, his adopted clone son. We're going to be seeing them again, if not predominantly in Season 2. We're going to be seeing them fairly predominantly moving forward throughout the rest of the series. That's pretty cool. His son was played, by the way, by Daniel Logan, who is also, like I said, he's been cast to play. It says Boba Fett in Season 2, but I don't know if that could be something just, you know, they're doing it to screw with us. So who the hell knows? Now on to Episode 2, and in his continuing search for the child's kind, Mando ends up giving safe passage for information about the location of more Mandalorians. On the way, they run into a couple of X-Wings that are on patrol, trying to root out remnants of the old Empire. While trying to evade these X-Wings, they crash on an ice planet that is not Hoth, but it's similar. And while Mando is trying to repair his ship, the passenger kind of wanders off. When Mando catches up to this passenger, he also catches up to a whole bunch of spider eggs. Now, as these spider eggs start to hatch, obviously tens of thousands of spiders is what it looked like, of all shapes and sizes, from really, really tiny ones fresh out of the eggs to very, very large ones that you don't want to be chased by, start chasing Mandalorian, the child, and the passenger back to their ship. Now, they actually make it back to the ship, but the spiders are starting to overrun them and tear up the ship pretty bad. But just in time, the X-Wing fighters show up, they find them, start fighting off the rest of the spiders, and they are saved. The last we see of the group, they are limping through space on their way to the next stop in their very badly damaged ship. Now, this episode, we were talking earlier, is kind of a filler. It didn't seem like it had a whole lot to do with the overall, arc of this season, but it's still significant because whatever is going on with this strange passenger, who is basically a frog that is carrying its eggs to, wherever the hell this frog person is going. After the X-Wing pilots fight off the last of the spiders, they decide not to arrest the Mandalorian and his crew, but they also decide not to help him repair his ship. Thusly, the Mandalorian has to repair his ship just enough to get it flight-worthy, and the last we see them as the episode ends, they are limping through space on their way to their next stop. So that's where it's going to probably pick up in the next episode. Let's talk about this episode for a minute. There's obviously a little bit of an arc that's happening with this frog person and the eggs they're transporting. It explains over the course of the episode that these eggs are the last of their family line, and that's why they can't travel light speed. It could damage the eggs, but it's very important they get to where they're going. So you do feel kind of an emotional connection to this person. But the question remains at the end of this episode, what kind of information does this person have after a Mandalorian gets them to where they want to go.
Yeah, apparently it says her husband has seen a Mandalorian. Now, assuming is it another Mandalorian that's just been on its own, or is it one of the ones that maybe survived from when we last saw them, as just piles of armor because they were dead, except for the armorer. I'm like, unless maybe a couple of them managed to survive and then maybe they spread out, or if it's just someone he knows who's seen him around, who knows? Maybe, hopefully we'll find out.
One of the really, really cool things, and we're looking at the right now. I'm showing the bar scene in the first episode of the season, but one of the really cool things about. Actually, one of the really weird things about this episode is the weird darkness of Baby Yoda eating those frog eggs. It's like
that's I'm glad you said it because I was about to say it next. I'm like, can we just talk about? It's adorable, but I'm like, have we noticed that every time he just fucking eats something, it gets him into trouble? Like he's got to stop doing that. I know he's a child, but man, he opened up the little spider egg. Ate one, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right. And then they all start wiggling. I'm like, oh god, no, oh god, oh this is bad.
And that was something. And that was something straight out of Aliens too. It looked just like that, which I thought was really cool.
And then he just casually starts eating one of the frogs, and then of course he's like, no, stop that, damn it. It's kind of upsetting because I'm like, no, stop, dude. I know he doesn't understand, but there's only so many of them, man.
There is something very weird about those eggs that I can't quite quantify as to why, but when Baby Yoda first walks up to that jar that's holding the eggs, it seemed like gravitated towards him.
Yeah,
I don't understand. I don't understand the significance of that. Is it something about the Force?
I thought it was like a Force connection, or maybe he had some sort of they just kind of pulled towards him, and maybe it was just maybe it was just a strong connection. I don't know. And then he just takes it out and sips it like a giant caviar. Like, well, that's it. I'm like,
yeah, that was something kind of dark. But again, I can't get past that scene of them gravitating to him in the jar. It's very, very weird to me. I mean, maybe that'll be explained.
He does put his hand to the glass, so they just kind of came at him. So I don't know. We haven't really explored or seen what was the deal with his Force abilities and whatnot. I kind of thought at that part of the episode where the frog lady just kind of walks off and goes in that little hot spring, and she had the eggs in there. I was like, wait, is she gonna ink these eggs here? Is this about to? I mean, really, I thought wait, are we gonna do this now? Okay, but we still have a slight problem. and then yeah, he just eats one of those little alien spiders, and I'm like, okay, now we have a bigger problem. Shit. And I don't like to put I don't like to think about logic when I think about Star Wars because I don't want to I don't want to say shatter the illusion, but I'm like when they're running away from all the spiders and then Mando is just sitting there just gunslinging all these spiders. I'm like, so does he run out of ammo? I mean, is there ammo? I mean, does he just keep shooting them? Is he I know there's a lot of them, but can he not just keep firing at them and they'll just kind of eventually go away? I didn't want to think about it, but I'm like, oh, maybe the gun overheats because that's kind of in the video games, that's kind of how they get away with it. It's it overheats, so you kind of have to be careful with it. So you can't just keep sitting there firing away.
Well, those spiders are pretty badass looking. For the small spiders, that blaster seemed like it would do the trick. But for those really big spiders, there's one up on the screen right now. It seems like that blaster probably won't do it. You need something a little bit bigger. And I was kind of wondering. I was kind of wondering if when that spider jumps on the ship and starts driving its leg through the window, whatever the hell they shot him with, the X-wing fighters, it had to have been the main weapon for the X-wing fighter itself, and not one of those rifles they were using. But whatever it was, it hit it hard.
That was when they landed. I think it's when they landed. Yeah, they just kind of and then took their guns out and just picked off the rest of them, because that is a much larger weapon on those fighters. And then they just maybe that's what they did. But that was kind of terrifying. It's one of those great moments where the music's uplifting, the ship's finally getting out of the thing, and then it came down. I'm like, God, son of a bitch, no, go away. I mean, I thought they were gonna make it. I mean, they do in the end, but I was Come on. I thought he blew it up. Remember he turned and checked those little grenades, and I thought he like maybe stopped the big spider. Well, I guess not.
Well, he stopped him for a time, but it certainly wasn't for that long. And obviously the last we see of them is they finally managed to escape the whole spider hell, and they're limping through the galaxy on the way to whatever the hell is next. So we're going to see what episode 3 for season 2 brings. All I know is this season, the first 2 episodes, it's very early, but it's still shaping up right now to be every bit as good as what season 1 was. And season 1 was phenomenal. As a matter of fact, Mandalorian is quickly becoming one of my favorite Star Wars properties. That's saying a lot. I mean, even it's up there with a couple of the movies that are phenomenal.
Again, it's in the world of Star Wars now, and it's. I mean, I'm not saying it stands alone, but like, as its show itself, yeah, no, I like it. It's well done, and it does feel like Jon Favreau is putting like some passion into this. This isn't just like I'm gonna pump out 3 more Star Wars movies because Disney's hurting for money. Obviously, it's rough goings right now. Yeah. but like no, this feels like something that he actually wanted to do and wanted to see this, and a lot of people put some care into the show, and I definitely love it. It is some episodes, like I said, I think it was like episode 5. I remember the first time we saw Tatooine again in this show. I was like, oh, this is just This is just jerking me off as a fanboy. That's what you're doing. This is a fan service episode. I'm like, hey, look, there's Tatooine. Remember that? Hey, look, that guy's in the cantina. Hey, look, he's sitting exactly where Han Solo is. He's actually posed the same way. And I'm like, who is this? First of all, I was like, who is this little happy fucking punk? Like, who the fuck do you think you are? But I'm like, oh, it's all shit like that. The same with this episode, the first episode of season 2. I'm like, oh, okay, we're going back to Tatooine. Sweet. Oh, there's the Boba Fett armor. There's Anakin. What's left of Anakin's pod racer, and it's now a speeder bike. I'm like, okay. You got these little nuggets that I appreciate, that I notice. Like, I see you, John. And I know you see me, see you. So
yeah, I'm definitely digging this show so far. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm pretty confident it's going to go on being pretty badass. But that's the reviews of episodes 1 and 2 of season 2 of The Mandalorian. Probably having another one come out sometime next weekend for episode 3 of season 2. Until such time, say goodnight, Jeremy.
Good night, Jeremy.
And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.